go ahead and get started. There may be some other folks joining in, as we go on. But I'll just ask that you just stay on mute if you don't mind. That way we don't have feedback and vacuum cleaner sounds or whatever that is seems to pop up on these WebEx calls. If you have any questions or need any clarification during the presentation, I'm going to ask that you pull up your chat box and you can type your question or comment into the chat box. And our very own Kelsey Sellender will be behind the scenes keeping track of those, and we'll make sure that we answer them at the end of the call. So that's our main housekeeping item. What we're going to do today is we're going to go through a PowerPoint presentation, which you should be able to see on your screen. And we'll also pull up the payroll deadline calendar that we are launching. We'll pull that up at the end of the presentation. And again, we'll take question and answer at the end if you have any. We've got about 51 participants on. I told the group at 9 o'clock this morning that they were like early church. They were going to get a lot of ums and ahs from me, just waking up with my coffee. So hopefully I'll be cool and crisp for y'all here. Let's go ahead and get started. So again, thank you for joining in. Hope y'all are having a good day so far. So the first few slides I'm going to take you through are going to give you some idea of how Temporary Solutions has been performing during COVID. We've got some comparisons to show you. We'll also show you what kind of work time has been going in here. And then we'll talk about the payroll deadline calendar as a solution to workload management, but then also really just to give you and your temporary employees more visibility of the payroll process so that y'all can start to anticipate pay dates and onboarding dates and those sorts of things. So hopefully this will be a really helpful and informative hour for y'all. All right, I'm going to start with our first slide here. If I can get it to go. So I'm going to start off with talking about PA action. So we have a beacon section here at Temporary Solutions. We have 5 full-time employees. We've got a beacon section supervisor, and then we've got 4 beacon specialists. We also have some temporary employees and retirees who help keep us afloat in Beacon, and they're on right now, so I'll give them a special shout out. Our Beacon section is responsible for initiating and completing PA and OM actions in Beacon, and then they also, maintain those profiles as well. So, they'll do things like supervisor change forms and direct deposit changes and things like that that don't require PCR. For the period September 2019 to September 2020, you can see on your screen here just how many PA actions we do in a biweekly time frame. You can see that prior to COVID, which is right around pay period 12 or 13 of this current calendar year, we had a lot of ebbs and flows. So it was easier to manage workflow prior to COVID, easier than it is now. And you can see by that orange line that our pre-COVID average for PA actions was maybe a little more than 275 actions per biweekly pay period. So, certainly a workload, and that number has increased. That average has increased since COVID, as designated by the horizontal gray line. We're probably at about 305 or 310. So not a dramatic increase, but an increase nonetheless. What I really want to point out on this slide is really just how that increase, though, has been sort of constant and sort of exponential as well. starting with, again, pay period 12 of this calendar year, you can see where the ebbs and flows stop, and then, we went up to almost 450 during pay period 17. Some of you may recall that was the pay period where we had approximately 100 people that were paid on a special ACH transfer the Monday after the payday for that pay period. So that particular pay period, we realized a volume that was way beyond what we could handle in a biweekly pay period, which is why, again, about 100 people needed to be paid on ACH transfer. So the workload since COVID obviously it's been steady and increasing. So just wanted to show that to you. On the OM side, it's been similarly affected by not just COVID, but by Quickbooks. So as many of you know, we transitioned from our Temp Wizard billing system to Quickbooks over the spring. And with that, I explained this on our last large conference call, was that with that, we began organizing our temporary positions in child org units. So prior to Quickbooks, we had about 18 agency-level org units within Temporary Solutions. If you're with DHHS, your temporaries were organized in TS, DHHS org unit. When we switched to Quickbooks, we created about 350 child or customer org units. And so now, using DHHS as the example again, instead of having everybody at the DHHS agency level within Temporary Solutions, they're now broken out amongst all the different hospitals and other units there. While this is helpful on the Quickbooks side and on the time reporting and time security side, it does create a little bit of a challenge in that there are a lot more OM actions that need to occur, because if we have a vacant temp position that we need to put a temporary into, odds are that the classification needs to change and the organizational unit needs to change. So those are OM actions that need to be attached onto the PA hiring or reinstatement action. So as you can see here, around pay period 11 or so, our OM actions started to go off the charts to a high of almost probably about 750, I guess, for pay period 17. And again, we're looking at classification OM actions, transfer OM actions, and then the PA actions. So where we were really just doing a nominal amount of OM actions, prior to Quickbooks, as you can see on the left side of the graph here. They've really jumped a lot here this current calendar year. So where we were just doing one PA action and usually no OM action, we're now doing as many as 2 OM actions to every PA action. So that's all time, and those things have to happen in succession prior to finalization to ensure that the employee is in the right spot come payday, and also that they show up on your invoice every billing cycle. Switching from PA and OM actions to Docusign, I wanted to shed some light on the packet velocity and the status of packets that go out. These numbers on this particular slide right here are current through this morning. So what you see here is the volume of Docusign packets, or as Docusign calls them, envelopes that go out. We started to use Docusign in the February-March timeframe when we started to test the product. And when COVID hit, we fortunately were already so far down the road with Docusign that we were able to flip the switch on it and make Docusign our exclusive onboarding method. So you can see that, March, April, May, we had between 300 and 500 onboarding packets sent out. every month. And then, over the summer when DHHS, Emergency Management, and Commerce, DES hiring really started to ramp up, you can see where our Docusign volume peaked in July at about 800 packets. So those numbers have leveled off a little bit in August and September, and of course we're only halfway through October, so we only have 200 on there for the month. But a lot of packets are going out there. I want to say thank you to each of you for the work that you do on with your Docusign responsibilities. Many of you are the designated person for Section 2 of the I-9. So, for all of these that we're initiating, you're completing them. So we appreciate that very much. This next slide shows the status of Docusign packets from February, March through September. On the left-hand side, you can see that there's an envelope status graph and then some numbers there. The 3,620 total envelopes, that shows how many we initiated during that period of time. And then you can see the breakout of where each of those envelopes ended up. So, 93 were sent and not acted on, 15 were delivered, and I believe those were opened and not acted on. You can see that 2,499 were completed. So again, we thank you so much for all of your work in getting those done. I want to drop down to the last two. You have declined and voided. So those numbers reflect packets that were sent out and, of course, declined, turned back, and the packet went away, or voided because the employee didn't report to work or changed their mind. We got a bad email address maybe from the employee or for the agency representative, and we had to pull the packet back and then send it back out. So the voided envelopes account for roughly 25% of the total packets that went out there, which is a large number. Whenever a packet is voided and we've got to send another one out, that is, as you would imagine, additional time that we're putting into that onboarding process. It's additional time that y'all are having to budget and wait for that packet to get to you so that you can sign off on the I-9. So we really appreciate all the work, again, that goes into completing them. We do want to all do a better job of avoiding voided or declined packets by ensuring that the email addresses that are being provided on the job orders are accurate, and also that that employees are coming to work and taking the jobs that we are offering them. I know some of that's outside of our what we can do, but any help on the accuracy of those email addresses is just really helpful. On the right-hand side, you can see the completion rate is about 69%, so that's the 2499 versus the 3620 that were sent. This is a really helpful graph, I think, for everybody, so we'll take a few minutes to look at it. It's the velocity of the Docusign onboarding packets, and basically what this means is how quickly were those 2,499 completed packets done? Like from the point of initiation here at Temporary Solutions to you all completing Section 2 of the I-9 and finishing the packet, how long did that take? You can see that the highest percentage of time is, in terms of averages, is 2 to 7 days. And, what was it, 39.7% of packets were completed in 2 to 7 days. However, when you look past that and you consider everything from 2 to 7 days, 7 to 21, and 21 plus, that 2 to 7 and 7 to 21 actually make up the largest percentage of velocity on the whole chart when you add those two together. So what that tells us is that on average, we can expect an onboarding packet to take between 2 and 21 days to get back to us. These are Docusign timeframes that are on this graph here, so I couldn't get them any more specific than what we have here. But we get a pretty good sense of how everything is going and how quickly things are being turned around because so many are between that 2 to 7 and 7 to 21 range. On the right-hand side, you can see my percentages broken out. 27.4% are coming back within a day, which is just excellent. We really appreciate employees and HR contacts getting those back so quickly. 1,370 or 54.8% are between 1 and 7 days. And then the really concerning number there, 7+ days, being 17.8%. As y'all know, the issue with onboarding packets coming back within 2, 3, 4+ days is that if that employee has already, if that individual has already started working, we're going to be past the 3-day requirement for E-Verify. So, you know, we have to, when we eventually do E-Verify, then we have to enter in to that system the reason why the verification came after 3 days. And so, you know, if it was an agency error, an employee error, we'll have to document that. If it was a temporary solutions error, we'll document that as well. But that is a, you know, it's a risk and a liability that we not only need to be more mindful of and better at meeting, but it's something that I feel like we can get better at. And that's part of the reason for this payroll calendar that we're going to show you here in just a minute. So moving away from onboarding packets and Docusign, I want to talk a little bit about job order submitted versus job order start date, and then we'll go back to the Docusign numbers in just a second. I've got some stats up here for you. Between March 20th, 2020 and September 14th, 2020, a total of 3,306 job orders were received by Temporary Solutions in which the date the job order was submitted and the requested start date on the job order was plus or minus 100 days. And we use that figure because there were some packets in there or job orders in there that had you know, retroactive start dates. They had future start dates. They didn't have a start date, so it was kind of all over the place. So we really honed in on the plus or minus 100 days. Of those 3,306 job orders, agencies gave an average of 3 days notice of a hire. So that means that between the date the job order was submitted and the requested start date on the job order, it was an average of 3 days. So where that's it's problematic for several reasons. We understand that you know, you submitting a job order is based on a need or a demand. So you know, we're not saying that there's anybody's being lax or anything like that. It's based on the need. So, but 3 days doesn't. It creates some challenges not only for us but for the employee and for the agency as well. When we go back to the velocity screen here, onboarding packets again are on average being submitted anywhere between 2 and 21 days for the most part. So when you consider a 3-day turnaround time on the job order being submitted and the proposed start date, the 2 to 21 days does not factor well in that for us to meet that 3-day requirement for E-Verify, and it also doesn't help when it comes to getting that person into Beacon so that they can enter their time and be paid by their first scheduled payday. The other issues that we run into on that turnaround time is that 2,786 of those 3,306 job orders had a recommended candidate, so that's 84.3%. While it might seem like that is actually an advantage for Temporary Solutions to have a recommended candidate with 3 days notice, it definitely helps, no doubt about it, because y'all provide contact information and we're able to get a hold of that employee and start their onboarding process. However, it does put us on the clock, obviously, because more times than not, you may have already contacted that individual to gauge their interest. You've already discussed the position with them to see, again, if they were interested. And you may have already shared a start date with them. And so when 84.3% of those job orders come in and a person's already been identified, we here at Temporary Solutions need to make sure that we're working as quickly as possible to bring that person on, because odds are they're going to start when you've requested them. On the next bullet there, it shows that 1,865 of those job orders had individuals who were full-time status based on estimated hours. So this means that on your job order, you have estimated that the employee is going to be working 30 or more hours on average during the course of their assignment. When you have an individual who is estimated to work those hours, we check a couple of other criteria based for their high deductible health plan eligibility, but for the most part, almost probably all of those 1,865 are going to be eligible for health care. So if we are notified 3 days in advance, they're full-time based on an estimated hours of 30 or more per week, and we're not getting the onboarding packet back 3, 4, 10, 21 days into their, after we have initiated it, that's all time that's chipping into their enrollment period. So, if they were eligible, if they started on the first of the month and were eligible at the first of the month, again, it's going to take longer to get them in the system if we're not getting their onboarding packet on time, and that's less time that they have to enroll in HEHP. The third bullet there is 897 had a retroactive or same-day start date for 27.1%. Probably don't need to explain why this is an issue. Again, going back to the velocity statistics, if that person is already sitting at a desk and working, they're obviously recording time on a paper timesheet, and they're expecting to get paid on the next payday. So time is really of the essence for these individuals, especially if they were full-time based on estimated hours. They've got even less time to enroll. So with all of that considered, with the velocity, with the volume of packets, with COVID, and then also with these items on the screen here that we also have to consider, we do our best to keep up with demand given the staff levels that we have, and also given the deadlines that the State Controller's Office just has for biweekly payroll. I wanted to just show you a little bit about how we're keeping up with that demand and those deadlines. So from July 1st through September 25th, which is 12 weeks, Temporary Solutions staff members worked 1,168 hours, or 146 additional days, more than their planned working time. So that's 40 hours for full-time and 29 hours for part-time. So the effort is certainly there. We have a number of staff members who work 7 days a week in order to make sure that packets are being processed in time for biweekly payroll. Within the last 4 weeks, full-time staff from each of our sections have averaged more than 40 hours of work per week. So they are, working overtime to do that. We have one supervisor that averages over 60 hours per week consistently. We have another supervisor that is consistently above 50 hours per week. We have 11 temporary staff members who are retirees, and those individuals are limited to 29 hours per week plus their earnings limits. So they've got some things to consider when they come to work for us. The impressive number on that is that retirees account for 32.35% of total staff. So it's a bit when we have surges in volume, or if we have if we're pushing up against a deadline and it's getting particularly close, it's harder for us to to add additional work onto the retirees because they've got those considerations there. And with them being almost a third of our staff level, it just does make it kind of tricky for us to get everything done in time. We have added 5 new temporary employees in placement, Beacon, and finance over the last few weeks. So we have worked to increase staff levels to accommodate that workload. Excuse me. So we, having done all of that, adding on the additional temps, working to get retirees, on board that could come on and help out. Excuse me. And then also just working additional hours ourselves. We thought about, how can we frame things a little bit differently? How can we collaborate with our agency partners to manage this workload, not only for us, but for your employees and for the agencies themselves, so that we can have a better result. The solutions that are on your screen right now are not entirely they're not long-term solutions, right? And the questions that y'all have as we approach paydays, the stress that you're under to get onboarding packets done so that those packets can be submitted to us in time for payroll, we know that none of that is sustainable. It's an extremely stressful process. So we want to have something else in place to help guide how payroll is processed, and that's where the calendar comes in. So I have a few bullets here on the payroll deadline solution, and then we'll get to the calendar itself. But we decided that firm deadlines were needed for submitting job orders and onboarding packets for a given biweekly pay period and pay date. And I'll get into what that means in just a minute. We wanted to have this solution so that agencies could also have a clear understanding of when job orders and onboarding packets are due to us and how this impacts the employee's pay date. We get a lot of questions if, say, an employee has taken a long time to get their onboarding packet to us. Y'all are waiting and maybe even working with that employee to get his or her onboarding packet in. And then once you approve, once you sign off on Section 2 of the I-9, your next question is, okay, is this person going to make finalization? And so we just want to take some of that tension off of y'all. And then finally, it provides for temporary solutions to onboard employees and enter them into Beacon in a more timely fashion. What this means is that we would be able to issue PERNers sooner and also NCIDs when requested. Our thought is that if we have deadlines in place and we are able to get folks into the system during or before their first pay period, that they'll be able to enter in their time in ESS with an NCID and a PERNer. They'll be in the system in time for them to do that, to key that time in for their first pay period. So we get a lot of questions from folks. Why do folks have to submit paper timesheets for their first pay period? Well, this is why. It's just because the time that it takes to get people into the system under our current process is just it just sort of requires that. So if we can get those PERNers and access out prior to by the first time they're keying in their time, that should reduce the number of paper timesheets. The next bullet there is that with some deadlines in place, we'd be able to conduct PA checks prior to finalization for more accurate payments. And what we mean by that is we currently don't have the luxury of auditing our PA actions before finalization. So when it comes to the accuracy of banking information, or on the OM side, supervisor assignments, or did we click payroll direct deposit for everybody instead of payroll check? we don't currently have time to do that. And the reason being is that we are processing folks for the Friday payday all the way up to the preceding Tuesday's finalization. So we really feel strongly that we need to get away from that, and this is one way of doing it. Excuse me. Finally, a deadline would provide for org unit transfers to be completed prior to finalization for more accurate billing. When we moved to the model of, we moved to Quickbooks for invoicing, we, of course, had to do the child org units, and the employee has to be in the org unit, in your org unit by finalization in order for the invoice to be correct. So if you've gotten an invoice, or your billing contact has gotten an invoice where you have an incorrect person in your org unit or you're missing a person, more than likely it's because the org unit transfer wasn't done prior to finalization. So if we had an additional 2 weeks to get the org unit, the OM actions done, it's going to result in more accurate billing for you. So fewer credits, fewer issues, fewer past due collections, and things like that. If y'all have any questions at this point, that's the last slide there. So if y'all have any questions specific to the PowerPoint, we'll go ahead and ask you to put those into the chat box, and I'll go ahead and pull up the calendar in the meantime. Okay. Kelsey, can you pop on for a second and let me know if you can see the screen there?
Yes, so we can see it. There's just a gray, there are a few gray boxes hiding the last green column.
Is that helping?
Almost. There's one last one.
Okay. Those are my participant chat screens. Does that look better?
Yeah, that looks a lot better. Thanks.
Okay, cool. So y'all should have received this in the email invite that Kelsey sent out. This is our deadlines calendar, and it really marries up with the OSC payroll calendar. The pay period start and end dates and the pay days are all prescribed by OSC, so we've highlighted those in green just for visibility. The other 3 columns on there are what we have added. So I'm going to take you through the calendar here just so that it's clear what all we're looking at, and then if you have any questions, again, we'd be happy to answer those. So in the first column there, we have a column for job orders due to temporary solution. And so what we're saying is that for the pay period, and we're going to go to the green columns here, for the pay period start Saturday, November 14th through the pay period end Friday, November 27th. We are going to need job orders submitted to us via our portal by 5 o'clock on October 30th. So if you have a new hire, a reinstatement, a transfer, a separation, whatever it is, we're really focused on the hiring actions, so hires, reinstatements, and things. If you have any one of those with an effective date, a start date between November 14th and November 27th, we need the job order by Friday, October 30th. By getting it in by 5 o'clock on the 30th, we will process that hire for the December 11th payday, okay? So in doing this, we're not asking the employee to wait any longer for a paycheck because, again, December 11th is the pay date for the November 14th to the 27th pay period. What we're asking is that the agencies begin to anticipate their temp staffing needs to the extent possible at a higher level. So we're asking that by October 30th, you will have anticipated your temp staffing needs for November 14th to the 27th. I would say that probably about 30%, maybe more, of our job orders are for reinstatements. So we're hoping that we can that those will be no problem for you. It's going to be those new hires, obviously, that may create a little bit more of an issue when it comes to anticipating 2 weeks ahead of time. We are providing for you to be able to bring on people sort of at a moment's notice, quote unquote. And the reason, or the way that you would do that is through what we're calling a quick hire method. If it is past October 30th, using this example again, if it's past October 30th, but you need to bring somebody on during the pay period November 14th to the 27th, you can do that. You'll go ahead and submit a job order. If the job order is submitted to us by 5 o'clock on November 13th, 2020, then we will process that person for the December 22nd pay date. So you can see that the dates in the left-hand column, job orders due to temporary solutions, correspond with the pay day. So if that job order to bring that person on between November 14th and 27th is received between 5:01 p.m. on October 30th and 5 p.m. on November 13th, we'll process them for the pay period that corresponds with the deadline of November 13th. Okay, so that's how you would bring somebody on, quote unquote, on a quick hire. It allows you to meet your business need. It just pushes back the pay date for that individual. The second column that's on there is the completed onboarding packet due to temporary solutions via Docusign column. This column shows when we will need you to have signed off on Section 2 of the I-9 or whoever is designated, when we need that completed onboarding packet to us. So if you're submitting job orders all the way up through 5 o'clock on October 30th, we're going to be sending you Docusign packets as we get those job orders, processed. You and the employee will have until November 10th to get those onboarding packets to us and finalized for any job orders that were received by the 30th. One reason why we have this date is not only to give y'all and employees visibility on when we need those back, but it also allows us to be able to prioritize our actions to get that person into the system. So you can see here that mostly the onboarding due dates are on Tuesdays. We have an internal deadline here for placement counselors to turn over those packets, to upload those packets into our digital file cabinet by Friday of that same week. So we're asking y'all to get them in by Tuesday. We do have a little bit of flexibility to process those packets internally by Friday, but obviously we want to push that Tuesday date with everybody. We have heard from many of you that it would be helpful for y'all to have visibility on the status of Docusign packets. So if we send a Docusign packet out and the employee sits on it, you want to know that so that you can follow up with that employee or follow up with that supervisor. We have been working with Docusign to find a solution for that. There is a solution called I think it's called a viewer role in Docusign. And while that is a solution, it does present a couple of challenges. The first one being that if we assign you as a viewer, then you actually need to view the document before it ever goes to the employee. So it would put a burden on you to have to look at all of these before it can advance along in the workflow. The other side of it too is that we received feedback from a number of employees early on when we first launched Docusign that they were fine with Docusign, but they did not want their supervisor or their HR contact to see anything other than Section 2 of the I-9. So their personal contact information, their emergency contact, their banking information. So we understood that. So we're trying to figure out an alternate solution there. It seems like what we might be able to do is generate reports to show where everybody stands in the workflow, either like on a PDF that we send out, or creating some sort of a Power BI dashboard for y'all to see that. Obviously, both of those solutions have their pros and cons and also their challenges. So I brought that up just to let you know that we're working on a solution to make that easier for you. In the meantime, we really just need to collaborate both as Temporary Solutions and as the employer, just to stress with employees and supervisors how important it is to turn around those packets in a timely manner. So just going again through that first example on the table, job order due October 30th, onboarding packet to us by November 10th. The pay period starts November 14th and ends on the 27th. If we've got that Docusign packet on the 10th and Beacon can have it by the end of the week, they can begin then working that action through the person's first pay period, so that, again, with the goal of that person being able to hopefully enter in their time in ESS for their first pay period. The next section there, the next column, is paper timesheets to Temporary Solutions and ESS time approved by noon. So this is actually not any different than what y'all are currently doing. We ask that paper timesheets are submitted to us by noon on the Monday after the pay period. So that's essentially just documented, codified there, whatever you want to call it. As y'all know, if your employees are keying their time into ESS and supervisors are approving in MSS, or your time administrators are approving, that time needs to be drop dead approved by the day before finalization. So, if your employees are keying into ESS, you can use these dates as a general rule of thumb or whatever it is. You know that just as well as we do that the day before finalization is the drop dead. And then, for that first row, the payday is the 11th. So again, what this would help us do is process during that employee's first pay period, instead of processing them as we do now during their second pay period, trying to meet payday for the first pay period. It's just way too much for everybody to manage, y'all and your employees included. So again, we feel like we've provided a quick hire option here that would help get folks into the position quickly if need be. It's just going to push their pay date out a little bit. We got some feedback from agencies saying that this is what they do at their agency anyways for biweekly. So this isn't really a big change from what they do for their own direct hires. So we feel like this will hopefully be easy for y'all to manage, and also that you see the benefit of it. We did highlight some dates on this calendar here. You see them highlighted in yellow. All that is that, as you can see in the first column here under job orders due, most of these are on Friday. So we just highlighted the ones that weren't on Friday, so they just stick out to you. In this case, the first highlighted date is because Friday is Thanksgiving weekend. This is Christmas weekend, and then Good Friday. So again, if it's yellow, it just means that it's an irregular date for a holiday or some other reason. Down at the bottom, we just provided some verbiage there to explain, just to document what I've explained here. Again, we're asking that job orders be turned in by 5 o'clock, or requiring that job orders be turned in by 5 o'clock on the due dates in the first column. And then anything received after 5 o'clock will be processed for that person to get paid on the next pay date for the next row. If their onboarding packet is received and their time is entered and approved by finalization. You've got the quick hire information there. And then the two other bullets there are just specifics about the completed onboarding packets being submitted by 5 o'clock on the given due date. And then paper timesheets being submitted the Monday after the end of the pay period. So with that, I don't see any questions in the chat, but I'm going to just go ahead and open it back up. And if anybody has any questions or comments, we'd be happy to entertain those now. And in the meantime, Kelsey, if you have any other thoughts, anything that I've left out, please feel free to go ahead and share.
Okay. Just thank y'all for your time today. One thing that we touched on in the morning session earlier was that our true goal with the payroll deadlines calendar is to be very transparent about if you turn in your information this date, this will more than likely be your payday. And we're really hopeful that this will eliminate a lot of the confusion, and two, it will help everybody communicate and communicate what's going on a lot better, as well as two, I'm a very visual person, so with me being able to see everything all in one page, it really does even help me. So we're really hopeful and excited about this. Y'all are even more quiet than the morning session, so
yeah,
it's making me a little nervous.
Yeah.
I thought it was because everybody else didn't have their coffee, but
yeah. I've had enough coffee for several people today, Kelsey.
Same. So one of the questions from earlier that we were asked about was just to clarify that going off of even your example, Joe, for if somebody was hired on November 1st, would they still be able to be paid December 11th? And we're really trying to keep everything within those same rows. And then we have a question, will this be made available online? Yes. So we're going to post this everywhere. We'll post this in our customer portal, as well as we will be including this in our orientation paperwork that we send to temporary employees, as well as on our website. Good question.
Yeah, this presentation has been recorded, so we will post this presentation on our website in the coming days so that y'all can refer to it as well. Any other questions? All right, so it says, I had a manager want a new hire to start 10/28 of 20. Based on this, when do you need the job order? So we're basically accepting job orders for whatever start date that y'all want up until October 30th. So this process goes into place October 30th. So if you have somebody starting on 10/28, there's not currently a deadline for that because the first pay period that corresponds to a deadline begins November 14th.
Yeah, good question. Another thing too, I had someone reach out earlier asking if we are able to go through this with some of their hiring managers. I know that so yes, of course we will. I know that we had, I think Joe and I had met with 2 separate agencies, especially when we were moving towards our new job order portal. So yes, of course, feel free to reach out to me and I can get something on our calendars. Because sometimes it's easier just to hear it straight from the source, as well as you can send them the link to our recorded video that I hope to have up by Friday.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. We really encourage, we did that with DHHS and I feel like that went really well. We encourage y'all to, if we can participate in a staff meeting with supervisors or HR contacts or whoever it is, it's certainly not an imposition on our part. It actually saves our staff members time because if everybody's on the same page and there's collaboration between Temp Solutions and the agencies, it really kind of it helps everybody. So definitely reach out. All right. Well, with no further questions, if you do have any other questions, please feel free to send them to me or Kelsey. I appreciate everybody's time today and look forward to collaborating with you on this calendar.